Welcome back. So over the weekend, as promised, I was working on the design for these new gas struts for the doors, and as you can see, I've got them figured out. Just roughed them in, sort of, just kind of like a rod there, but obviously there'll be a proper gas strut, and I've shaped the brackets and also the hard points sitting under those as well. So that's basically how it's going to be. That's the one that mounts on the door. The one below is the one that mounts on the frame. And this rod there, that one represents how it's going to sit in the closed position, and this other rod here represents how it's going to be in the open position. Obviously the gas strut extends, the rod doesn't just grow longer like that. So that's how the bracket basically sits. And if we kind of look at it from the rear view, you can see we're fairly vertical in terms of the orientation, which is much better, and almost 90 degrees from the pivot point there at the hinge, which is better as well in terms of how much force the gas strut needs to hold. And it should only be maybe as much as most 150 pounds to hold this weight. Now we measured it with the scale and a broomstick with a similar position, and as you can see there, when it's in the closed position, it's basically over center there, just over center for where the hinge point is, which works out well because it'll mean that there's really no force, or maybe just a slight bit of force pushing the door in when it's all the way in the closed position. And it's much smaller strut, and the brackets aren't really any bigger. And ignore this seatbelt thing, that was an old design. They're coming off the roof, as you've already seen if you've been following along closely. And so starting out the week, I had Dan working on getting stuff organized for the glare shield. So here he's got the 3 different GPS antennas sorted out there, and also the vents for the defroster. So, and this is looking at the underside after he's done there, and he's got sort of mounts and stuff for there. But the next thing to do for this glare shield is take it down to the upholsterer and get them to put some ultra suede on it, so it looks kind of nice, because carbon fiber is okay, but it's going to glare like crazy off of the inside of the windshield. So the big project now is to get everything underway for pressurizing the cabin, or at least attempting to do it. So here we've got the bulkhead fittings going through. The first one there, this is on the back bulkhead. One's going to be for feeding the air, and the other one's going to be a gauge, and you'll see more of that later. And so here's Dan putting a bead of silicone around the edge there of those doors that close out the rear pressure bulkhead. And this is what they look like. Sort of got them in there, and also sealed up the bolt heads as well with a bit of silicone to make sure they don't leak. And meantime, I'm working on the doors, and I've got this one now 100% finished. So all the pin locks are hooked up, and they're all activating and actuating and all engaging into their respective sleeves. So that one is done, and getting ready to go on to the next one. And Dan's doing a quick fill job on these little latch recesses there on the lower part of the dash. Eventually there will be a glove compartment. We just don't have time to do it for the prototype right now, so we're just going to fill it over and then get it covered with ultra suede. So there's just laying up some resin and micro just to fill those quickly, and we'll sand them back, and then we can take those down to the upholsterer as well and get those covered with the ultra suede, as I said. And here's that same door now, and it also has the inflatable seal put back on. So we actually closed the door down and did a bit of a pressure test, and then we've got the mop there holding up the door this time, because the other door's already on, and we've been using the broom to hold that one up. So there you see we got the line, and because when we pressurize the cabin no one's going to be in it, we need some way of pressurizing the second door. So this is the one we're going to do. So that's going through the hole that was for holding the foreplane on, and you see all the other different things that are going through that forward bulkhead have been inserted or sealed or plugged up, or in one shape or another. And likewise there's the back again, so that's all been finished off and plugged up. So literally everything is done now, and it's just getting that second door done. And as you saw, I have it on there. So there's the 2 different outlets there, for one pressurizing, one for the gauge pressure. And you see I've got that other door on there, and I'm actually working on getting all the pin locks hooked up on that one. And there's our little bulb for inflating that door, so that's pressure tight there through that bulkhead as well. So we'll shut the door and be able to pump that second door up. And this is what it looks like on the back there. So got one line there which is basically hooked to a ball valve, and we'll be hooking that to our compressor, and then it has a flow valve there as the next thing, and then that is going to flow air into the cabin. And then the other bulkhead pass through there is just another line coming out of there, and on the end of that we have a sensor. The sensor that's going to be hooking up to the ECU, so we can have the actual pressure displayed on the engine ECU. And there's a digital gauge that we're going to be using mainly for testing, and that's right now showing 0.4 pressure or 0.5 pounds of pressure, which is interesting. So we've got to calibrate that thing as well. Anyway, that'll be exciting. That's the next thing that's about to happen. So maybe by Saturday we'll have some info on how it turned out for trying, or at least attempting, to pressurize the cabin. So that's our update for the first half of this week, and thanks again for watching.